The main card starts out with Serra and Lytle, which, you know, the last time they fought was so bizarre.
Terrible.
Wasn't it weird? We were sitting there at the Hard Rock, if I recall, and it was basically a clinch fest, and they kind of nullified everything they did. I would assume that it's going to be an action fight, and even, you know, Lytle has said since then it kind of changed his attitude, and he's won tons of bonuses, and he's earned himself lots of fights.
Yeah, exactly. I had lunch with them sitting together. So it was me and Matt and Chris before their first fight. And, you know, they were just talking about what a great fight it was going to be and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, my God, I mean, how bad can this get? It just really was a defensive, cautious type fight. But I think, you know, the fundamental change came in both guys, in that now, you know, they're not content to win a decision. They, you know, they're established now. It's, I think, what is it, 4 years more later, and I think they're at a position now where, you know, hey, they're established in their field. They know that they can win. They don't have to worry about losing a fight, which I think, you know, maybe back then a loss was more significant to them. And both of them now are confident with their hands. I mean, they both throw hands a lot. Lytle's, you know, submissions have been tremendous. We've always known that Matt Serra's had good submissions. So I like this fight. I think this should be an interesting fight, even though the first fight was terrible. I think that, you know, the rematch now should turn out to be pretty good.
You surprised at all that Chris Lytle is a minus 145 favorite? The match after that has fight of the night potential written all over it. Neither guy really wants to go to the ground. Gillard takes on Stevens, and they both have good knockout power.
Yeah, I think this is a really intriguing fight. I mean, this is one, like I was talking about earlier, you know, where I don't look at this as, you know, a marquee type matchup, but it depends. You know, we look at sometimes, you know, from the old, since boxing's been around for a long time, you know, what's the marquee matchup, the main event, the two biggest names. But, you know, what I think is good about MMA, and certainly what Joe Silva does, is he puts fights together where the guys match up and they're going to give you action in the cage. And this is one where, you know, maybe Melvin Gillard and Jeremy Stevens are not, you know, the high-profile names that are going to have, you know, 3-hour autograph lines or anything, but they're guys that, you know, they're going to throw down and they're going to look to finish the fight. Each guy has power. I like this fight a lot. I like Melvin Gillard to win this fight. I think he's a little bit better than Jeremy Stevens, but I think it's, you know, I agree with you. I think potentially if I was going to pick one before the fight that said, hey, this could be fight of the night, it would be this one.
All right, by the Vegas numbers, Gillard is a slight favorite at minus 150. Are you surprised that on the betting numbers, Evan Dunham, I mean, I know he's coming quickly here, but he's actually a pretty big favorite against Sean Sherk. He's minus 220.
I think that's too high. I like Dunham to win the fight, but if I'm talking from a betting standpoint, you know, to lay that kind of number to bet Evan Dunham, I think there's still some questions. You know, he's had a couple split decisions in there. You know, so you know, Sherk has been off a while, and I think certainly that's partly why the number is where it is. You know, I think Sherk would be worth a play, you know, if you're looking to, you know, kind of find an underdog to get you some money coming back to play, you know, because certainly Sherk, you know, you look at his career, I mean, who's he lost to? You know, only champions and really, you know, only the best of the best. Frankie Edgar's now a pound-for-pound guy. I know some people don't have him on the same level that, you know, they have GSP and Matt Hughes, et cetera. But, you know, certainly he's proven that he, you know, he's an elite guy, but he's still a world champion and a pound-for-pound guy. So, you know, if you're not one of the top guys in the world, you know, you don't beat Sean Sherk. So, you know, I think if Sean Sherk is, you know, a 2-to-1 underdog, I certainly think he's worth taking a flyer on. If I was just going to pick an outright winner, I would pick Evan Dunham. But I can see a good play on Sherk with those odds.
Pretty healthy number on Ryan Bader. He's going against Little Nog, Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. Minus 200. What do you think? Too high?
I'm in the same way. I think Bader's going to pull this out. I think Bader's, you know, kind of grind him out with his wrestling and everything. I think this number is a reflection of Nog's performance against Jason Brills. Mm-hmm. And I want to say I discount that a little bit because, you know, he changed opponents late. Jason Brills was certainly a guy that a lot of people were complaining, why is Jason Brills in this fight? And, he shouldn't be getting this. And, there was a lot of heat put on the UFC and Joe Silva on that particular matchup. And it turned out that Jason Brills, performed tremendously in the fight. I thought Brills won the fight. A lot of people did. But even if you thought he lost, you have to concede that he performed far better than expected, and I think that's why the number is where it is.
Yep. Bader, if he gets the fight to the mat consistently, if he can do what Brills did, then he rolls to a victory. I don't think he'll get submitted. If it stays on the feet, though, it's going to be pretty interesting because Lil Nog is a pretty good boxer. He uses both hands, and I think that's the problem with Bader. He's got knockout power, but he's still very much a right-handed fighter, and he's also a guy who leaves his head out way too much. So it depends on the takedown defense of Lil Nog. All right, the main event, interesting. Not the fight we expected with Frank Mir. Crow Cop is in there for Big Nog. To me, the fight comes down to Frank Mir and game planning, and I just think in some of his big fights, his game planning has been flawed. He's played into the strengths of others. The only way that he loses this fight is if he chooses to engage in a stand-up war against Crow Cop, because I don't think Crow Cop can keep it off the ground, and once on the ground, Mir should have a big advantage, no?
I agree with you, but I think Mir is going to try to stand up with him. That's what I think Mir is going to do. And, everybody said before he fought Nog that he should, that was a mistake for him, and he look how he looked there. I think Mir wins the fight, Steve, but you're right. It's a dangerous fight for him because if he chooses to stand, Crow Cop is very comfortable there, and you're playing to Crow Cop's strengths. And, while Crow Cop isn't what he was in, say, 2005, still a dangerous striker, and I think he's kind of getting reinvigorated. I think he got sick of the business, sick of all the stuff going on, and we didn't see the best Crow Cop for a while. I think now he's kind of loosening up. He's back. I think he's enjoying his work, and so I anticipate seeing a better Crow Cop. It's hard. What do we make of the fight with Pat Barry? Crow Cop was great before that fight. It was the first time that I can remember in covering him where, he was approachable. He was actually quite funny before that bout. And, it seemed like he was very comfortable. Pat Barry really loosened him up. Now, a little indication this time around that we're getting the old Crow Cop. He was annoyed by Mir's trash talk and everything. But, I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I'm going to pick Mir to win. I think Mir will ultimately get it to the ground, even though I think he's going to try to stand with him. And I think I'll pick Mir by submission.
Yeah, see, I think it's a mixed bag because Crow Cop I thought looked awful until Barry kind of lost his focus. He was getting the snot kicked out of him, but that's the key with Crow Cop is if you stand with him the entire time, he's like a punching bag. He can take so much abuse, and Mir may beat him up, but at some point, if he stands with him long enough, he could get caught. And it just, boy, if I had an insider tip and you could talk to the Mir camp and get an honest assessment of what they're going to do, and they would tell you we are taking this fight to the ground, then Mir clearly is the bet. But boy, with Frank, sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah, Frank. I think he's fallen in love with his hands. Yeah. And he's got good hands, but I think he was content to stand there with Shane Carwin. That wasn't a good move. I think, Frank probably has to stand up to, at least for a while, kind of parry Crow Cop and avoid something. But I don't think he wants to go 15 minutes in a fight with Crow Cop strictly on his feet.
UFC's in an interesting run right now, again, trying to deal with injuries, and you got guys booked on the reality show, so, the cards aren't all star-studded. They're good fight fan cards, and they're good matchup cards. This card, in terms of the buzz and, what's going to come out of this? What kind of pay-per-view results you get out of this one?
They've been on a roll in terms of pay-per-view. It's kind of interesting. If you look at some of the numbers ticket-wise, they haven't done as well as you think, and I think that's clearly due to the economy. They didn't sell out in Oakland. They didn't even come close, but they had a really enthusiastic, strong crowd. They didn't sell out in Boston. They had tremendous media coverage in Boston. They got close to a sellout, but certainly not a sellout. But the pay-per-view numbers have been consistently good. They've been hitting high numbers. I think it's going to drop down on this one. Their average now is around 500,000. So I think this one is going to be average to slightly below average on pay-per-view. I think they're going to do 4 to 500,000, and I'm going to guess closer to 4 than to 5.
Not bad though, considering what they used to get on a Saturday night against something like a good college football game with Boise State and Oregon State going at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if you look back, you compare it to boxing because that's the other thing that has the most pay-per-view. I was in Los Angeles last week for a pay-per-view Shane Mosley fight, and Shane Mosley, one of the big names in boxing, they're going to be lucky. They haven't announced the figure yet, but they're going to be lucky if they come, 125,000. There's very, very, very few boxing cards in a year that'll do 500,000. The absolute biggest boxing cards, the Manny Pacquiao fight, the Mayweather fight, if he ever fights again, those are fights that will outdo MMA. But other than that, not really.
All right, check for the coverage on Saturday night. Kev will have some stories. We'll be blogging up on Cage Writer as well. Thanks, Kev.
Thank you, Steve.